Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the Harborough series. Harborough is the southernmost district of the East Midlands county of Leicestershire. There are 91 parishes here, so let's put the spotlight on one. Hello everybody, now for this episode of the Harborough series, I completely forgot to record an intro. As such, this is the best you're going to get here. I blame the heat. This was the day that broke the UK's temperature records after all. At 10 AM when we were here, it was already way over 35 degrees. Anyway, we're taking on today the lovely parish of Swinford. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. For the last time for now, welcome to Harborough. Today we're in Swinford, a nucleated village with a population of 586 people according to the 2011 census. Swinford is located within the most south-westerly point of Harborough. Its name has two possible derivations. One is Anglo-Saxon, deriving from the head of the Swin, a tributary of the River Avon. The other is Old English, Swin+ford, literally meaning pig ford. This is more likely, as in the Domesday Book, the village is given as Svineford. Swinford used to have a preceptory, founded before 1199. Only small, the site of it is now on land which is occupied by the M1 at Catthorpe Interchange, a major road junction to the village's west. Historically, Swinford may have been one of the more significant settlements in Leicestershire. The Domesday Book recorded 7 manorial estates here, more than anywhere else in the county, including Leicester. Swinford's population decreased at the turn of the 20th century from its peak several decades before. It's now quite the little idyllic spot in the Leicestershire countryside. A wind farm was constructed at Swinford in 2012. It consists of 11 turbines, each of 2 megawatt capacity, and it's operated by Vattenfall, the company mentioned in the South Kilworth episode. Let's get walking and see what this part of Leicestershire can tell us about rural life in the Avon Valley. I'll be honest with you, with this one I struggled to find information. Sometimes that's the way it goes. Some have loads to talk about, some don't. This is very much one of the latter. Swinford is located on a cycle route. You might be able to make out those signs here. The route is number 50, which roughly follows the course of the former Great Central Railway. Oddly though, it's not a rail trail. It concentrates on quiet country lanes like these in Swinford. A footpath now, which will take us over a piece of scrubland to Chapel Fields.
Styles are not fun.
I hate styles.
They need to be done away with, forthwith. It's no good with me when I'm having to wear a skirt because it's so bloody warm. Excuse my black trainers, but I'm having to wear a skirt because it's so bloody warm. Try getting over a style in a skirt.
Now we're on Chapel Fields. This house in the corner I forget the name of, but it was something to do with a well, suggesting that at one time there was a water source close to here. Chapel Fields takes us to Chapel Street, and yes, there's a chapel. I believe this is or was an independent chapel. Again, there was next to nothing out there about it. Here we have the village hall. Its largest room is for hire and it can hold a maximum of 150 people. Parts of it have at various times been a builder's yard, a blacksmith's forge / smithy, and a builder's workshop. And that's where we come across the parish notice board. 4 down and 87 to go in Harborough. By this point, I was kind of wishing we didn't have to leave Leicestershire yet. It's always handy when these buildings have date stones. It means I don't have to research when they were built. 1911, this one. It says it right above the door. It was first constructed though in 1905, so 1911 must refer to an addition of some sort. At the end of the road, we meet Rugby Road, where there's a small playground. The church is next. The Parish Church of All Saints is a Grade II listed building. This is a 12th century Norman rebuilding of an earlier Saxon church. It has a 14th century square bell tower. One surviving Norman feature is the circular font, made of red sandstone from Kuiper in Warwickshire. The church has an excellent collection of 20th century stained glass by the famous London firm of Clayton and Bell, given by Richard Spencer. On the wall, we've got a tablet telling us about the west window, which was restored in 1992 in gratitude of the Simons family. So we're in a church, so the hat and glasses have gone to remain respectful. Check out this awesome piece of stained glass. Isn't that fantastic? And this ceiling's quite high as well. Probably one of the tallest I've seen. Lovely little church, this. According to Januki, historically there's no mention of a manor house or a hall here, despite the fact there were so many manorial estates. I found one though. That's a manor house in front of us. Now we're on the high street, and the property you can see here is the Old Bakehouse. The local pub is also on the high street. It's called the Checkers and was formerly known as the Checker Inn. The origin of the name Checkers has several possibilities, including the rare checkers or wild service tree. Another possibility is of Roman origin. Back then, a checkered sign on a building denoted a pub. So I'm on my own now because Nikki is retired to the car, which is parked in the shade. I'm carrying on because there's not a lot left of Swinford. So I'll be able to manage the last few 100 meters or so of this in the heat, but after this today, that'll be it. There won't be any others that we film whilst we're in this part of Leicestershire, because now the sun is high up in the sky and it's really quite warm. But we'll soldier on. We'll finish Swinford off. Like I said, there's not much left, so let's keep going. We're now back at the junction where Kilworth Road meets the High Street. You'll have got by now that this is certainly not a linear village. We keep going round in small circles. Let's go up School Lane. As schools go here, a public elementary school or national school was built in 1874 near the site of an earlier school. The new building could hold 84 children. The modern school is small. It hit the local headlines earlier this year after an issue regarding wraparound care. I must remain impartial, so the article is linked below if you want to read about it. That's something of a rarity to see a school that's so close to the side of the road, as this one is here in Swinford. Usually they're set back a little bit. Some beautiful houses up School Lane. Check these out. These are definitely what Nikki would call chocolate box cottages. I love that term. Buses now, and Swinford is the odd one out in this little run. The 58, which has been a mainstay in the last 3 episodes, doesn't run here. All it has is a school run to Rugby. It might be lacking a little in the public transport department, but it certainly isn't when it comes to looking fabulous. All around Swinford, there are loads of flower displays. It's gorgeous, this. There are no shops here, nor is there a post office. That said, there is a pillar box located at the corner of Chapel Street and Lutterworth Road. Now I need to drive out towards Catthorpe, where there's a rather major road junction where the M1 meets the M6. It's Catthorpe Interchange. On the way out to Catthorpe Interchange, we came across Swinford Cemetery, located on Rugby Road. This is something I couldn't really find much about, so here's what we thought of it. As village cemeteries go, we thought it was quite large. It seemed to be in sections, possibly split by denomination. There's loads of room in it for future burials, and there's a good view at the far end. So Nikki's decided to walk around the cemetery with me as we head towards Catthorpe Interchange.
Yeah, 'cause it's cool.
Yes, under the shade of the trees.
Tree covered.
Yes, we're okay in here.
32 degrees.
Yeah, it's a good thing that Nikki's with me actually, because last week in South Kilworth, we didn't record this, but Nikki told me something very interesting about a bell which you can sometimes find on the tops of some Victorian graves. Do you want to explain, Nikki, while we're in a cemetery?
Yeah, the Victorians had a very specifics when it came to death, and for Victorians, death was just as important as celebrating a life as celebrating a birth, was to commemorate a loved one's death, and it cost a lot of money to bury somebody in Victorian times. But one of the things that the Victorians had was a real fear of death and a fear of being buried alive. Now I'm going to put some links in, and Andy might even put some pictures over this part if we can find some. So during Victorian times there was something that was invented that was called the safety coffin, which basically meant that your loved one could be buried, and should they come back to life, they would pull on a string that had been tied to their wrist, and it would ring a bell at the surface to indicate that somebody in the grave was still alive and they could be dug up. I don't know how often that this would happen, I don't even know if it even did happen, but it's just kind of a thing that the Victorians were very into, you know, at that point. And the other thing as well that Victorians used to fear, and you probably see this in some cemeteries where you might see a grave.
Can we see it here?
I can't see one here. I think there is one, but I think we're away from it. When you see a grave with like a cage or with wrought iron works over the top of it. The other thing that they had was a huge fear of being dug up and their bodies sold to the body snatchers for the dissections and for the, you know, for the anatomy people. So a lot of them were buried with a lot of ironwork around them, and people even paid privately for security to watch over their loved ones for a certain, you know, number of weeks or months. If we can find some pictures, like I said, I'm sure Andy will either put them in or will have put them in by now. But also there is a link to, if I can find it, if it's still on YouTube, there was a really interesting link about a programme about the Victorians and their attitudes to death, which I found to be quite fascinating, and I'm pretty sure that some of you guys will as well. So if I can find that, I'll add it to, I'll ask Andy to add it to the links for that.
The more you know. The safety coffin. Swinford used to be on the A427, which led under the M1 to Catthorpe. You can still get to Catthorpe by road, and in doing so, you'll pass under Catthorpe Interchange, where the M1 meets the M6. This is junction 19 of the M1. Originally, it was just a junction between the two motorways. It was modified in 1994 with a link to the A14. In recent times, it had become grossly overloaded and many accidents occurred here. Between 2005 and 2010, it saw 12 fatalities. As such, improvements were carried out between 2014 and 2016. The government knew as far back as 1998 that the interchange was a problem. Currently, this handles around 157,000 vehicles per day. That's a lot of traffic. So it never ceases to amaze me how much traffic there is on the roads these days. The M1 and the M6 are both quite busy, even in this heat. They must be mad. Speaking of mad, I think we are, aren't we?
Definitely. 32 degrees at 10:30 in the morning, we must be nuts.
It is only 10:30, believe it or not. You wouldn't know it.
It's like the Med.
It is like the Med. It's terrible, it really is.
The only reason it's terrible is because we're not about to go and get a slushy from the bar and go in the pool.
Yeah, although we are going to find a pub.
Oh yeah.
And that's bound to have a cold drink. I think we definitely need that. So, yeah. Anyway, 10:30 in the morning, that's not bad. We've got through those 4 parishes here in Harborough. There are 87 to go here in this district. And of course, Leicestershire is a big old county. There's still plenty of other places to visit within it. We will be back at some point, but for now we're going off to a different part of the country while we're on this trip. And I've enjoyed my time here in these 4. So going forward, it'll be good to come back and see what else this place has got to offer. There's no picture bit for this one here in Swinford because it's too small. So yeah, hope you've enjoyed this little run of 4. We will be back at some point in the future. I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and this has been the parish of Swinford, and I'm out.